I'm Hazel. The afternoon sunlight filters gently through the trees in Forest Park, casting golden flecks on the moss and ferns. I'm pushing the stroller along the winding path, my fingers lightly grazing the handle, as the chirping of birds fills the cool, pine-scented air. Eric is beside me, carrying a thermos of coffee, and Emily is skipping a few steps ahead, her laughter like sunlight piercing through the clouds. Inside the stroller, baby Matthew stirs, his tiny fists waving under the blanket. Emily peeks over and giggles. "He looks like my doll," she says proudly. "But he's louder." Eric chuckles. "Let's hope he doesn't take after me, then." I smile at them, my heart swelling with a feeling too profound to put into words. As we reach a clearing overlooking the river, I stop to take in the view. The water shimmers below, and the city skyline is a soft silhouette in the afternoon haze. Emily climbs onto a nearby rock and spreads her arms. "This is our place," she declares. Eric nods. "Our little kingdom." I lean into him, my head resting on his shoulder. "Who would have thought?" I whisper. Just then, a gust of wind rustles the trees, and I turn my gaze. There, at the edge of the trail, stands a tall man in an expensive coat, his silver hair glinting in the light. It's Mr. Blackwood, the father-in-law Eric left behind. He looks at us, his once confident posture seeming smaller now. For a moment, our eyes meet. I give a polite nod, and to my surprise, his gaze softens. He lowers his head slightly and then walks away. Watching him go, I'm filled with an unexpected sense of peace. Emily tugs on my sleeve. "Mama, can we come here again tomorrow?" I kneel down to zip up her jacket. "Of course, sweetheart. As long as you want." Eric adjusts the blanket around Matthew and looks at me. I smile, feeling the warm fading sunlight on my face. It's hard to believe how far we've come. A year ago, Eric showed up at my door in the rain, a broken man leaving behind a cold marriage. He was married to Ivy Blackwood, the daughter of a wealthy and controlling man, Mr. Blackwood. Ivy was a social butterfly, always seeking the spotlight at parties, while Eric yearned for a simple and loving home. One stormy night, on my shift as a paramedic, I received a call about a medical emergency at a fancy country club. The rain was pouring down in thin, silver threads against the ambulance windshield. I sat in the passenger seat, my gloved hands on my knees, waiting for such calls wearily. When the radio crackled with the emergency details, my body reacted before my mind. By the time we arrived at the club, the parking lot was a sea of luxury cars. Inside, there was a panic at one of the tables. A man in a tuxedo was slumped forward, his face swollen, gasping for air. I quickly began the necessary treatment, and within minutes, his condition stabilized. As I stood up and looked around the dance floor, my heart skipped a beat. There, near the dais, stood the groom. He was tall, with dark hair and a smile that I knew so well. "Leo," I whispered, barely audible. But the man looked at me with confusion. "I'm sorry," he said politely but distantly. "My name is Ethan Blackwood." I was desperate. "You have the same birthmark behind your right ear," I blurted out. Just then, Mr. Blackwood, sitting at the head table, rose with a red-faced anger. "This is a private event. Get her out of here," he thundered. Two security guards escorted me out as guests whispered behind their hands. Back in my small apartment near the old bridge, I couldn't shake the image of the man. I rummaged through the closet and found an old shoebox wrapped in faded ribbon. Inside were mementos of my first love, Leo. We met at a college book fair. I was a volunteer helping to organize the event, and he was a free-spirited artist who was reluctant to part with his precious art books for the fair. By the end of the week, we were inseparable. But our relationship burned too bright. Jealousy crept in when I saw him laughing with a fellow artist. Harsh words were said, and he left town with his mother. I wrote letters, but they went unanswered. Years passed, and I became a paramedic. I had a brief and cold marriage to Carl, a banker who was more focused on his work than on me. We divorced quietly. The next day, I went to the company where Ethan worked. I needed to convince myself that it wasn't just a coincidence. When I saw his name on the office directory, my chest tightened. I managed to get a few minutes with him. I showed him an old Polaroid of me and Leo. He stared at it in disbelief. "This looks like me, but I've never seen this picture before," he said. I told him about Leo, how he disappeared 15 years ago. Then I mentioned the birthmark. Slowly, he lifted his hand and felt the spot behind his ear. His face went pale. "Do you see? It can't be a coincidence," I whispered. Ethan drove home that night, his mind full of questions. When he asked his mother about it, she broke down in tears. She admitted that he had a twin brother, Leo, who was lost in a hospital fire the night they were born. The hospital records were lost, and his father couldn't bear to keep searching. Ethan and I decided to hire a private investigator, Mr. Reed, a retired detective recommended by a friend of Ethan's. After a couple of weeks of waiting, Mr. Reed found something. He discovered that Leo had become a professional photographer and married a woman named Lily. They died in a car accident last year, leaving behind a 3-year-old daughter, Emily, who was in the foster system. We went to the Family Services Center to see Emily. At first, the staff wouldn't let me in because I wasn't a relative. But Ethan, as Emily's uncle, was allowed to visit. When Emily saw me, she walked straight up to me and called me Mom. It was like a piece of my lost past was finally returned to me. Meanwhile, Ethan's marriage to Ivy was on the rocks. Ivy was angry that Ethan was so involved in finding out about his brother. She accused him of being obsessed with me. "You're married to me," she spat. Ethan finally had enough. "We were married in name only. You want a wild social life, but I want a real home," he said. Ivy smirked. "Leave, and you'll lose everything: the cars, the money, the business connections." Ethan looked her in the eye. "I'll build something different." And so, on a rainy night, he left the Blackwood mansion and came to my apartment. A year has passed since then. Our small apartment, once so quiet, is now filled with laughter and joy. Emily's toys are scattered everywhere, and on Sundays, the smell of pancakes fills the air. One morning, I received a letter from the Family Services Center. The adoption was finalized. Emily was officially ours. Then, in late spring, I started feeling strange. Nausea and exhaustion crept over me. At first, I thought it was the stress of work. But my colleague, Grace, suggested I take a pregnancy test. I laughed it off at first, as I'd been told I couldn't have children. But that night, after Emily was asleep, I took the test. To my shock, 2 pink lines appeared. When Eric came home, I wordlessly handed him the test. His face showed disbelief at first, then pure joy. "You're kidding," he whispered. I managed to laugh through my tears. 16 weeks, I said. The doctor confirmed it that morning. Now, as we stand here in this beautiful clearing, surrounded by the sounds of nature and the love of my family, I realize that true wealth isn't about money or status. It's about the hearts that choose to stay with you through the storms of life.